Today I'll be changing the coolant expansion tank in my 2005 Cayenne Turbo. It started leaking again. This is actually the third coolant tank this car has needed in roughly 85,000 miles. So Porsche, if you're listening, please change suppliers on these coolant tanks because they're garbage. So I'm not going to use a Porsche branded coolant tank since I had problems with those in the past and decided to use the cheapest one I could find on Amazon. And we're going to see how this one does, and I'm going to change it out. So if that interests you, stay tuned. So the first thing we got to do is remove these engine beauty covers because the coolant tank is located right underneath them. So what you'll need is a flathead screwdriver and then a T20 Torx, because there's a T20 Torx bit or screw that's located right underneath the washer fluid cap here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and get all these removed. The bolts that mount the expansion tank to the body of the car are under this brake booster vacuum pump assembly. To remove the vacuum pump, remove these two 10mm bolts. But before you do, I highly recommend you disconnect the plastic vacuum lines so you don't risk breaking them. Porsche is very proud of these plastic lines, and the last time I checked, these were well over $100 to replace. So the first thing I'm going to do is use a set of channel lock pliers to remove the vacuum line. Now remove the two 10mm bolts that hold the brake booster vacuum pump to its mount. Oops, I forgot about this vacuum line. You definitely want to disconnect it from its plastic holder before trying to remove the vacuum pump assembly. Next, I'll remove the torque arm to gain easier access to the expansion tank bolts. To remove the torque arm, you'll need a 16mm socket for the bolt that fastens it to the body, and a 12mm triple square and a 16mm socket for the nut and bolt combo that fastens it to the engine. Okay, the next thing we have to do is we have to remove this bracket right here. And this bracket holds on the torque arm, and it's held on by two bolts. There's a bolt down here to the body of the car, and there's another one right underneath this location, somewhere around here or underneath the fender. And how we get to that one is we remove this headlight. So I'm going to go ahead and get this headlight removed. And if you look in the trunk area, you should have a tool like this in order to remove the headlight. All you do is just pop this little cover open. And then turn it counterclockwise. And your headlight will pop out. This is the 16mm bolt that needs to be removed. I used a number of extensions and a ratchet to remove mine. Definitely be careful because the last thing you want to do is drop the bolt when removing it. With the bolt behind the headlight removed, there is only one bolt left holding the torque arm bracket in, and it's this one. Remove the 16mm bolt and the bracket is almost ready to come out. There are a couple of clips that hold a wiring loom in place that are fastened to the side of this bracket. You will have to remove them before it will slide out. Success! I'm now at the point to start removing this coolant reservoir tank, but before I do that, I need to remove all the coolant out of it, otherwise it's going to create a big mess. So what I'm going to use is a pump from an old spray bottle and then a container to spray the coolant into. So I just insert the pump into the tank and just start spraying. Now that the coolant tank is pretty much empty, I'm now ready to start disconnecting the hoses and level sensor that connect to it. I use channel lock pliers and a flathead screwdriver to remove the hoses on mine. This T30 Torx bolt is the last bolt I have to remove before the coolant tank will come out. To remove the coolant tank, slide it towards the engine and then lift up on it. Here's my beautiful, shiny new coolant tank that I purchased from Amazon for almost half the cost of an OEM one. It Since I haven't had good luck with Porsche branded ones, I decided to try my luck with an aftermarket one this time around. Seriously though, I don't think things can get any worse. I'm already on my second tank in the last 4 years of ownership. So far I'm really happy with the fit and finish of this aftermarket tank. Time will tell if it will last longer. Fingers crossed. Installing the new tank is just the reverse of how we removed it. Slide in the new tank, making sure to be mindful of the hoses that connect to it. Go to your home! The new tank is in. Now it's just a matter of reconnecting all the hoses. Once I have all the hoses connected, I insert the coolant tank into its metal holder. You do this by positioning the tank where it belongs, and then push it back away from the engine until it stops. You will know when the coolant tank is locked into place when you can only move it in the direction of the gold arrows. If you can move the tank in the direction of the red arrows, then it isn't locked into place. Next, I tighten the T30 Torx bolt that will keep the coolant tank from moving. Don't forget to reconnect the coolant level sensor. Now I'm ready to reinstall the torque arm bracket. Attaching the wiring harness that clips to the side of the bracket can be a little tricky. You can either clip it in before you move the bracket into place or do it after. Remember, this bracket is held in by two 16mm bolts, one on the shock tower and the other under the passenger fender that you gain access to by removing the headlight. I recommend tightening the bolt on the shock tower first because it will perfectly position the hole for the bolt under the fender.
Like a glove?
I'm now ready to reinstall the torque arm. I install the engine side first, followed by the body side, and then tighten the bolts that hold it in place. So now I'm ready to reinstall the brake booster vacuum pump. First, I install the two 10mm bolts that hold it in place, then reconnect the electrical connector, and lastly, reinstall the vacuum line. Time to reinstall the headlight.
What am I doing wrong? Oh. Helps when you have it in the track. Alright, there we go. Now we just gotta snap it in place using our trusty tool. And to lock it in place, you turn it clockwise instead of counterclockwise. There we go. Now we're locked in. Now we're ready to start filling it with coolant.
I filled my tank with coolant until it was just below the max mark. I am almost done with replacing the coolant tank in my Cayenne turbo. There are only a few things left to do. Install the cap to the expansion tank and reinstall the engine beauty covers. So how much did I save by replacing the coolant tank myself? My local dealer quoted me 2 hours labor plus the cost of the tank, which added up to almost $600. I was able to replace my tank for less than $100, and it only took a little over an hour to do. If you can do basic maintenance items on your car, then replacing the coolant tank shouldn't be difficult at all for you. Hopefully this video will help you save a few $100. As always, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer them. So long.